Memory is not something you're born with or without. It's something you build. Every strong mind you admire became strong through training, repetition, and daily use, not talent. Most people forget because they consume information passively. They read, they watch, they listen, but they don't train their brain to keep it. Without reinforcement, the brain lets information go. That's why even important things disappear so quickly. In this video, you'll learn how to train your brain to remember more, retain information longer, and build a memory you can rely on every day. Hack 1. Focus completely. Your brain only remembers what it truly pays attention to. If your attention is weak, your memory will be weak. When you try to learn while your mind is distracted, divided, or rushed, the information never fully enters your brain. It passes through without leaving a strong trace. This is why you can read something and forget it moments later. Your eyes saw it, but your mind was not fully present. Focus is the moment when your brain decides something matters. When you slow down and give your full attention to one thing, your brain begins to build stronger neural connections. These connections are what allow you to remember later. Without focus, those connections remain weak or never form at all. Distractions break this process. Every time your attention shifts, your brain resets. It cannot build a stable memory if your focus keeps moving. True focus means giving your mind enough time to absorb and process the information without interruption. When you train yourself to concentrate deeply, your memory improves naturally. You no longer need to force yourself to remember, because focused attention has already done the work. Over time, your brain adapts, and remembering becomes easier, faster, and more reliable. Hack 2. Repeat at the right time. Memory becomes stronger every time you return to the same information. The first time you learn something, the connection in your brain is weak and unstable. If you leave it without reviewing, your brain slowly removes it because it assumes it is not important. Forgetting is not a failure. It is your brain protecting space for what it believes matters more. Repetition sends the opposite signal. Each time you review the information, your brain strengthens the neural pathway connected to it. The connection becomes thicker, faster, and more permanent. What once felt new begins to feel familiar. What felt difficult begins to feel automatic. Timing also matters. When you repeat information after some time has passed, your brain must work to recall it again. This effort makes the memory stronger than repeating it immediately without thinking. The small struggle to remember is what reinforces the connection. With consistent repetition, information moves from short-term memory into long-term memory. It stops feeling temporary and becomes part of what you know. Over time, you no longer need to force yourself to remember. The information stays because your brain has learned that it is worth keeping. Hack 3. Use active recall. Memory becomes stronger when you force your brain to retrieve information on its own. When you only read or watch something repeatedly, your brain becomes familiar with it, but familiarity is not the same as memory. It creates the illusion that you know it, but when the moment comes to recall it, your mind feels blank. Passive exposure feels easy, but it does not build strong retention. Active recall is different because it requires effort. When you stop and try to remember without looking, your brain searches for the information. This search activates and strengthens the neural pathways connected to that memory. Each time you successfully recall something, the pathway becomes faster and more stable. The act of remembering is what trains your brain to remember again. Struggle is part of the process. When recalling feels difficult, your brain is working harder, and that effort makes the memory stronger. Avoiding the struggle keeps your memory weak. Facing it builds mental strength and deeper retention. Over time, active recall makes information feel natural and instantly accessible. You no longer depend on seeing it again and again. Your brain learns to retrieve it quickly because you have trained it through effort. This is how memory becomes reliable and long-lasting. Hack 4. Simplify the information. Your brain remembers what it understands, not what it merely sees. When information feels complicated, scattered, or unclear, your brain struggles to organize it into a stable memory. It becomes noise instead of knowledge. You may look at it many times, but without clarity, it never fully settles in your mind. Confusion weakens memory because the brain cannot store what it does not clearly recognize. When information is simple, your brain can process it faster and store it deeper. Simplicity gives your mind structure. Structure allows your brain to know where the information belongs and how to retrieve it later. Without structure, memories remain fragile and easily fade. With structure, they become stable and accessible. Complexity also creates mental resistance. When something feels too heavy or overwhelming, your brain naturally avoids holding onto it. Simplifying removes that resistance. It allows your mind to accept the information instead of rejecting it. This makes the learning process smoother and more natural. Clarity strengthens neural connections because your brain can link the information with meaning. Meaning is what makes memory last. When your brain understands something clearly, it no longer sees it as temporary. It becomes part of your mental system instead of something external. Over time, training yourself to simplify everything you learn makes remembering easier. Your brain becomes faster at organizing information and stronger at keeping it. Memory improves not because you force it, but because you make information easier for your mind to hold. Hack 5. Stay consistent. Memory is not built in a single moment. It is built through repeated daily use. Every time you challenge your brain to remember something, you strengthen the mental pathways connected to memory. When this happens regularly, your brain adapts. It becomes faster at storing information and faster at retrieving it. But when you stop using your memory actively, those pathways weaken over time. Consistency sends a clear signal to your brain that remembering is important. Your brain responds by improving its efficiency. It begins to hold information longer and recall it with less effort. This is not instant, but it is reliable. Small daily effort creates gradual improvement, and gradual improvement leads to powerful long-term results. Irregular effort slows this process. When you practice once and then stop for long periods, your brain does not receive enough reinforcement. It cannot build strong and permanent connections. Consistency, even in small amounts, is far more effective than occasional intense effort. Over time, remembering stops feeling difficult. Your brain becomes trained. Information stays longer, and recall becomes more natural. What once required effort begins to happen automatically. Consistency transforms memory from something unreliable into something you can depend on. Hack 6. Sleep and rest. Memory is not just built while you are awake, it is strengthened while you rest. During sleep, your brain actively organizes and consolidates the information you learned during the day. This is called memory consolidation. Short-term memories, which are fragile, are transferred into long-term storage. Neural connections are reinforced, patterns are strengthened, and your brain decides which information is worth keeping. Without this process, even hours of studying can fade quickly. Lack of sleep disrupts this process significantly. If you stay awake too long, sleep poorly, or have irregular sleep patterns, your brain cannot fully consolidate memories. Vocabulary, facts, and skills may be partially forgotten because the neural connections remain weak. This is why students often forget material they crammed the night before. They never gave their brain the rest it needed to solidify it. Rest is not only about nighttime sleep. Short breaks during study sessions, mental downtime, or even brief periods of relaxation help your brain process information. Pausing allows your mind to organize ideas, link them with existing knowledge, and make retrieval easier later. Studies show that spacing learning with breaks improves long-term retention far more than non-stop study sessions. When you prioritize sleep and rest, your brain works more efficiently. Recall becomes faster. Information stays longer, and your ability to remember everything improves dramatically. In short, sleep and proper rest are not optional, they are essential parts of learning and memory mastery. Hack 7. Trust your brain. Memory functions most efficiently when you operate with confidence in your brain's ability to process, store, and retrieve information. Doubt and hesitation interfere with this process. When the mind questions its capacity to remember, neural pathways weaken, and the brain's efficiency in consolidating information decreases. Trusting your brain, on the other hand, strengthens the connections necessary for retention. Confidence creates a mental environment where information is treated as important and worthy of reinforcement. Trusting your brain is not about assuming perfection or expecting instant mastery. It is about consistently approaching learning with a mindset that your memory is adaptable and capable of growth. Every act of focus, repetition, and recall reinforces the neural networks responsible for storing information. With repeated practice under trust, these networks become more robust, increasing both the speed and reliability of memory retrieval. Consistency amplifies the effect of trust. By repeatedly challenging your brain and reinforcing that it can handle information, the pathways for memory storage become stronger. This reduces the mental resistance that often leads to forgetting, making recall more automatic and natural over time. Trust interacts with other memory processes, including focus, repetition, and simplification, enhancing their impact. Ultimately, memory improves when your mind believes it can succeed. Trust reduces cognitive friction, stabilizes neural connections, and ensures that the information you engage with is encoded deeply and retained reliably. When you integrate trust as a central component of your learning process, memory becomes not just a function of effort but a dependable, trainable skill that strengthens progressively. Hack 8. Reduce information overload. Your brain has a limited capacity to process information at any given moment. When you expose it to too much information too quickly, the brain cannot fully encode each piece. Instead of forming strong, lasting neural connections, the information remains weak and temporary. This leads to faster forgetting, confusion, and difficulty recalling details later. Reducing overload allows the brain to concentrate its resources on properly storing what truly matters. Memory depends on depth, not quantity. When the brain has enough time and mental space to process information, it analyzes it more clearly and strengthens the neural pathways associated with it. Strong pathways make recall faster, more accurate, and more reliable. When information is rushed or stacked excessively, these pathways remain fragile and are more likely to fade. Overload also reduces mental clarity. When too many inputs compete for attention, the brain struggles to decide what is important. This weakens focus and disrupts the transfer of information from short-term memory into long-term storage. Giving your brain fewer inputs at once improves concentration and allows proper consolidation to occur. Controlling information intake improves overall cognitive efficiency. When the brain processes information in manageable amounts, it organizes it more effectively, reinforces it more deeply, and retains it longer. Over time, this approach strengthens memory capacity, improves recall speed, and makes learning more stable and sustainable. Your memory is not fixed. It improves every time you train it, every time you focus, and every time you make the decision to strengthen your mind. The more you apply these hacks, the easier it becomes to retain information, recall it faster, and trust your brain to perform when it matters. Start applying these techniques daily, even in small ways, and you will notice your memory becoming sharper and more reliable over time. If you found this video helpful, subscribe to the channel and join me on this journey of improving your mind and your life. Consistency is what makes the difference.